Welcome to Human School. I'm your host, Dr. Patil Armenian. After 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, and 2 years of fellowship, I thought I was done. I did my time, got my degrees, and now I was just gonna live life. Well, think again. Some of my greatest schooling has come after my formal education was complete, and it keeps on coming. Join me at Human School, where we can learn together. I'm an emergency physician and medical toxicologist working at a large teaching hospital in California. I'm also a mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend. Whether you work in healthcare or not, you too lead a busy life. Together, let's work on how we can thrive in all of our real world roles. On this podcast, we'll dig deep into what it means to constantly learn and evolve, to be human. Every other week, I'll share some of my personal stories, interview inspiring people, and offer tools to help you learn more about yourself. Being on the front lines in the ER, you learn a lot about life and death. And though my philosophies were born in a busy emergency room, they can apply to anyone trying to live a joyful life here on Earth. Please listen, share, and subscribe to this podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on Instagram at Human School Podcast, and feel free to let me know what topics or guests you want to hear about. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Human School. Today we have back on one of my favorite humans and favorite people ever, Leo Max. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you for having me back. Honored to be here, stateside this time, without any technical difficulties from the jungles of Indonesia where I was last time. So happy to be here.
Leo's been on the podcast before. He's an amazing spiritual hypnotherapist who was on episode 3, where we talked about shadow work and other tools that can help us. And you're back here in California now, and
Yes,
welcome.
thank you so much for having me. I'm ready to dive in and see where this journey takes us.
Let's do it. I took a break from the podcast for the last few months. That was primarily driven by a need for rest and to focus more on my family. But I wanted to come back, and actually, I wanted to come back with you because I just kept thinking about all the similarities we might have in our lines of work, and that well, there are some things we need to discuss.
Always, we could be here till the ends of time. Throw a dart on a topic and we'll find a way to dive into it.
Well, I felt like I want to take the temperature, right? I want to take the temperature of the room, of the people around us, of the globe. I want to just step back and see, what themes are coming up for people right now in your work. Because I do feel like those themes change.
hmm
And I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the same things coming up over and over again in my work. And so I want to know, what are you seeing right now with people?
Yeah, well, the number one theme, which is always consistent in my work, is childhood trauma. I think people are now just realizing even more so than ever the seriousness of it and the impact that it has on your life as an adult. I think we used to live in this paradigm where it was the past is the past, I moved on, look forward, be here now kind of a mentality, or time heals all things, time heals everything. And I think society is coming around and realizing, oh, wait, maybe not. I tell people time only gives you more time to deal with the past. It really doesn't erase or dissolve anything. It just gives you a longer timeline to work through something. So, inner child healing, early life trauma, but that's going to be consistent probably till the end of time that I'm doing this. This is going to be my number one theme. So I guess that's not really new, but I'd say the new aspect of it is I think people are coming in that maybe I wouldn't have seen before, or maybe that wouldn't have been as open to coming to a session. Like I'm having a lot of clients sending their parents to me now, which is really cool. So I'm having people in their 60s and 70s come for hypnotherapy, which I think is so cool and really badass to see that generation starting to kind of look under the hood a little bit. So that's really fun. And I'm currently in a wave of a lot of breakups and people moving through divorce.
Oh, I felt like I heard a lot about a lot of that during kind of peak and just post COVID times, but I guess it's like another wave right now.
I think there's a little bit of a wave, and I definitely had a lot during COVID, absolutely, and the time frame after. But I think now people are also, separations aren't so immediate. So I think a lot of them started around that time frame and they have kind of elongated into the time we're in now. And people are now in a space where they can start processing that separation. Because right after you split, it's not always the best time to run and jump into a deep form of therapy like I do, because we pull so much up to the surface. So I tell people when you're working on something like a separation, that's the perfect time to see someone like a talk therapist because they're great at helping someone turn a corner, move through present life difficulties and complications. But when you're coming to see me, we're going to go deep. We're going to really open some drawers that have been closed for a while. So to open those drawers, maybe from childhood, plus deal with a divorce, that's a lot on your plate. You're adding a lot more. You're adding a lot more chaos to probably already a difficult situation. Not to say it couldn't be helpful. So I think what I'm seeing are people that started to split around that time, and now they're starting to land, look back and go, "What was that? What was all of that? What happened during those years? How did I get here? And what do I need to do to not repeat those cycles all over again?"
I like the way you put that. You're like, the kind of the emergent threat of I'm going through this thing right now. That's really handled best almost before you get to your level, because then what you do is so deep and it's unpacking so many almost sometimes suppressed memories and things you'd forgotten about, that it's like you got to get that baggage a little bit processed first, probably to have the
Yeah.
best experience with
hmm
your type of therapy.
Yeah, there's different therapies and medicines for different times. And the deeper, more intensive ones, you want a good foot on the ground. So things like this or like an ayahuasca ceremony, my personal recommendation is to have one solid foot at least on the ground when you go into something that can be that disruptive. Because especially for something like a plant medicine that could really change your life in such a short amount of time, you have to ask yourself if you're in a mental position to handle that amount of change. We're not always in that position.
Yeah. And just to clarify, you are not a plant medicine facilitator,
Correct.
but we're both, pretty knowledgeable about those topics as well. And I really like the way you put that, because these are things that you can be so vulnerable and so open to, not just conversation, but even manipulation, that you really need to have some sort of like solid grounding to be able to enter that state.
Yeah, 1000%. And the last thing people have been coming in more to see me for are sole purpose and what can I contribute with what I've got, the skills I've got, the resources, the type of person that I am. I think simply because we're seeing just so much heaviness in the world, so much destruction. And I think to just sit, it feels uncomfortable to feel like you're sitting and not contributing or feel like, or just feeling like you could be doing more. That's not to add to the cycle and the paradigm of our world where we always feel behind and we never feel enough and we never feel like we're doing enough. It's not that. I think people are coming to terms with they're seeing lots of other people being of service, being in their magnetism, having this momentum, feeling like their things they're putting out into the world or their existence as an essence matches their internal world. And I think that's powerful and it inspires a lot of people when you see someone really on fire, when their light is shining and they're in what I would call their divine service, whether that's motherhood or selling out, huge retreats. I don't think there's a better or worse or any comparison there. I think it depends on the blueprint of the soul that came in and what their service looks like to them in the most authentic way. So I think people are really narrowing down on that and saying, okay, what really is my essence? What are my natural gifts? And how do I want to bring them into the world and not take everyone else's criticisms or thoughts and ideas about it too seriously?
Do you have any specific examples that come to mind where someone left a session or series of sessions with you and then they just knew, like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life now, and had to
Hmm.
change something?
Yes, I had a client who had quite a lot of health problems for several years. Um, I would say I've had a few of these recently. Some of them I've had a couple even where they couldn't even work for over 10 years. That's how bad
Wow.
their
From
that
like
health
physical
was.
problems?
Yeah. Either, yeah, in extreme fatigue or, they have such a finite amount of energy that they can't hold a job, or it's so inconsistent that even working, let's say, at a grocery store or a coffee shop, the social interaction can be so draining for these people, or they never know if they're going to wake up on a good day or a bad day. So canceling, they get fired from jobs because they don't know the consistency of their well-being. So I've worked with a few of these people, gotten them on their feet to where they're, not fully back 100%, but they have at least a certain amount of reserves that they can start working again, where they can at least start a life. I mean, there's also so much depression for these people because they
Mhm.
feel like life is happening outside, like they're inside watching from the window. And so a lot of these people definitely become practitioners of some kind, of course. And I have seen them, one went into sound healing, and another went into nutrition, and another one into hypnosis. So hopefully I played a little role in that.
That's
I'm sure that I
great.
did. So I think it takes some time because you also, after being sick for so long, you really take some time to remember who you are. Like, our identities become so interwoven in chronic illness. A lot of these people are also secretly terrified to be healthy because
Oh.
they now have to be out into the world and start doing life and kind of picking up where they left off, which might have been a long time ago. And this comes up a lot. A lot of these interesting layers where these parts inside of them kind of keep them sick because these parts think, well, at least I know what to expect when I'm inside and I'm not feeling well. When the world feels unsafe, these parts go, we're going to shut the system down and we're going to stay here because being small and sick, at least we know what we're dealing with. Being out there, well, it's a mess out there. Look at the world. It's crazy. Why would I want to be healthy and be out there? It's very interesting how those layers come up. So it's a journey.
I mean, is that something that typically happens quickly, or do you work with them for a long time to get there?
Really depends on each person. Some people, it can be very swift, and some people, they need to take this wall down brick by brick. It really depends on what feels safe to their system.
Now, you mentioned parts, and we talked a little bit about parts on our last episode, but what do you mean when you say like these parts of them?
Yeah. So I do this process called parts work therapy, which is from Dr. Dick Schwartz. And it's not, I don't even want to say it's an idea because to me, it's not an idea. To me, it's a reality. But his his framework is that we are not one mind. We have multiple voices and minds in all of us, and that's universal. And so the extreme version might be something like, yeah, schizophrenia, but all of us have different internal voices that speak to us and communicate to us and sometimes to each other. So you'll hear it all the time in our languaging. Oh, part of me wants to forgive my dad, and a part of me really doesn't. Part of me hates him and never wants to forgive him. But then there's this part of me that's like, oh, but he's getting old and he did the best he could and he did the best with his awareness. And then the other part jumps in. Well, no, he's an asshole and I'm never going to let him off the hook for all the things he did. So right there, we've got two parts. They both have their point of view. They both have good reasoning for they for their thoughts and their beliefs. So parts work therapy is separating them out and learning more about them one at a time so that they're not ping-ponging in our mind or going back and forth and leaving us exhausted in the process.
I mean, it just totally makes sense, right? I feel like I think that way all the time. Actually, before this, so let me tell you what I did this morning. We had a training event for this program called Caring for the Caregiver. And
Okay,
so, which sounds so logical that caregivers also need care. But as with most logical things in medicine, sometimes we forget about them. But it was actually a really nice 4 hour thing of getting people more comfortable with talking to peers and creating like a peer support network of who you can go to if you have a bad outcome, a tough case, something that went wrong and you feel, upset about it or guilty. And so the person organizing it asked if I would come tell a story to start the day off. So I went
great.
and I told a story about a bad outcome that I had because you're not in healthcare if you don't have some bad outcomes now and then. And it was a case I'd actually forgotten about for years, and a recent other case 2 days ago triggered that memory. And the whole time, even while I was talking, part of me was like, this you telling your story is going to help people so that they know they're not alone. And then part of me was like, well, why are you being so selfish, saying all these like things that are super personal to you, and what do they care, and you're saying too much, and
Right,
so I was like, I'm speaking while there's this still internal battle going
right.
on.
Totally. So yeah, there's the part of you that wants to share, that knows people are going to benefit from what you have to say. And if I were to read between the lines, the other part feels that it's too much, or that sharing and being open and vulnerable in that way isn't safe
Yeah.
for some reason, whatever reason that is.
No, that's exactly how you're absolutely right. I felt like,
Not to put you on the spot.
no,
All the
please put me. I was
parts
already
are
on the
activated.
spot this morning.
That's true.
I've been on the spot all day. But you're so right because I felt like, oh, like, I said too much. This was
Right,
too much. Now everyone's going to be like, well, we don't need to know all that
right.
information about you. And yeah,
So let me ask you one question about this since we're here. Ask the part what it thinks could happen if people know too much about you.
think if people knew too much, maybe they would have less respect for me or think that I'm weak when I'm supposed to be like the strongest one in the room because
Totally,
it's my butt on the line at the end of the day every time as the attending, ER doctor in the room. But yeah, it's like that
totally,
weakness. I'm not going to get that respect. I've worked so hard for people to just think like, oh, she's this badass that we respect, and I don't want to lose that.
totally. That's the perfect example. And in parts work therapy, you just start with something like that and you pull on that string, and it leads to some just very eye-opening discoveries. You could ask that part, has that ever happened before? This part feeling weak from being a little too open. And it could lead to some very interesting memories or experiences, some that might feel very trivial as an adult. This is the other thing I wish more people knew about is we're always looking back from our current adult self with our awareness. So people tell me this a lot in therapy. Oh, this such and such happened, but I got over it. I was fine. Like my mom wasn't that bad. I figured it out. But in that moment, you didn't know that. You didn't know you were going to be fine. That moment with the mom, whatever it is, that's just a random example, was huge. Or, your first boyfriend leaving you in elementary school, that was heartbreaking. These moments, yeah, we can laugh at them as an adult, but they can stay with us and these parts remember. So then when we move through life and experience something similar, the parts come up and go, "Oh, I remember what this is like. Oh no, avoid at all costs. Alert, alert, alert." And that's kind of the basis of parts work.
Well, it's very helpful. Thanks for breaking me down. No.
I was gonna go deeper, but let's not unravel this whole tapestry on your
I
nice
mean,
podcast.
well, this isn't a nice podcast. It's we
This
go deep on
wholesome.
topics here. It is wholesome. We're going to keep it that way. No.
Yes.
So, okay, so those are some good like themes that are coming up
Mm-hmm.
for people. Anything else you feel like you've been dealing with a lot lately?
I used to talk about childhood trauma, realizing more of the impact of that, soul purpose, wanting to be more out in the world, wanting to know their blueprint and what they're here to do and contribute, and divorces, a little bit of chronic illness. I feel like those are the big ones. And of course, there's always self-worth is probably
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
safe in the body and feeling worthy, probably the two biggest themes that I work on. And again, I think that'll probably be till the end of my career.
I think that's just a human thing.
Exactly.
Now, can we go back to soul purpose for a second? But
Yeah.
do you feel like soul purpose, it's like there's this blueprint that it's this is what you're supposed to do for like one thing in your life, or do you feel like that changes depending on where you're at or how old you are?
I think we get an outline, and our free will is what colors in the lines.
I like that.
Kind of like those, it's like a coloring book. We kind of have, okay, here's the shape, here's the general idea of what you want to do, because the blueprint isn't given to you. It's something you craft as you're coming here. It's not random. It's a okay, here's what I did the last few times. Here's the things I did well. Here's the things I did not do so well. Oops. Put me back in, coach. Give me another chance. And you craft this blueprint and you pick some of the environments and conditions that you feel like are conducive to working on that blueprint. So, for example, something that might be on there is forgiveness for a mother figure. Let's say you tried that a bunch of times and it didn't go so well. Like you always ended up fighting or you always ended up having these big eruptions and there wasn't those big lessons in repair. There was always that mother-child stress and friction. So you might come into this lifetime and what happens if your mom passes early? And oh, now what do you do? You might still find another maternal figure to work through that karma and that forgiveness and repair. It's not about the person as much as it is, I think, the essence of the lesson. And I think we can find that in many ways. Or you might work through that with Mother Earth. You might become a steward and a caretaker of a piece of land or look out for a certain particular type of animal or work in a garden, build a community garden center, but with this essence in mind of I'm going to pour my love and forgiveness into the soil and plant this beautiful place and make this a community center. I don't think it's so linear or that we just have one way to do it.
I'm glad you said that because I think I have been just always been programmed or thought to think that okay, everything happens in these steps and you're going to do this thing and there you have to be a boss or this or that, and it's not linear, and also it doesn't have to do with all these external things necessarily that you get accolades for or recognition or
Right.
awards. It's like, what are you doing for yourself that keeps you on your own personal purpose?
Mm-hmm. The external world is just our way of having something to work through and against, push up against, so that we can learn the internal lesson. It always comes back to what am I getting or gaining on the inside from this external experience? That's what this 3D reality is for. Otherwise, we would have stayed up there. We came here to have a physical incarnation and have things to bump up against, have people with opposing views. Oh, can I find compassion for that person even though they believe in something completely different from me? It's not so much about the person and their views as much as it is the essence of finding neutrality, not being so triggered by otherness or differ differing viewpoints, and the compassion. So in that example, it's not so much about, oh, the karma between maybe you and that person, although that's possible. It's about, did I learn to rely on my compassion instead of moving into judgment? And for someone like what you mentioned, okay, I have all these accolades, there's all these steps, I'm going to be do this and this and this. It's not that those are positive or negative. It's, is that is that the natural flow that this person is meant to do? Some people, they go into those drives and accolades because they think they'll be worthy or a good person at the end, and they get the gold star, and their parent will love them, and then they can take a deep breath. Or, oh, I'll only know that I'm good enough once I've done all these accomplishments. So for that person, it might not be the best path, because probably the best path would have been to do something else. But for some people, it is the right path, because maybe that path of accolades is showing them courage, empowerment, knowledge. Maybe they're here to accumulate wisdom or have an impact in a particular industry, or mentor people like you're doing in your field, and being a leader, changing some of the dynamics of some of these workplaces. So maybe that is the right path for some people and not for someone else. It's not so much about the 3D as much as it is, what's in my greatest heart calling within this path, and is, am I on this path for the right reasons, or because I think I need to be doing this?
How do you know if you're on the right path?
That's part of the challenge, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
that's part of it. Learning your own self, learning what integrity feels like for you, learning what feels like a yes and what feels like a no. We all have to learn energetic mastery at some point, and that always begins with us and some of our internal compass. It doesn't mean you're always going to know every step of the way or that it was the right thing to do. All you can think back on is, did it feel right? Did I really give it a good thought? Did I consider it with my heart and soul and mind and logical mind? We don't have to toss that out the window. You know, did it make sense? Did it feel good inside of me? Did I want to do it? Did it light me up? And I think taking that leap over and over again is a big lesson for all of us.
And everybody's energetic signature is so different. I'll give you
Mhm.
an example about me. So I know when, I mean, I could just be tired all the time because I work a lot, I'm doing a lot of things. But I notice when it's the times when I'm doing something and I don't feel tired. I've forgotten that I haven't gotten my 8.5 hours of sleep that night that I prefer. And I'm just in something, I'm just doing it. So that's one when I just feel energized, like just super energetic about something and I don't even realize that that's work or it could be work or that I'm doing anything. And then the other one is I get a lot of if something's off, I'll feel it in my abdomen. So either I'll have like some pain in my belly or nausea even if I think about something and I get that, I know that it's like it's off for me, but I need to recognize it.
Yes, the body's going to give a lot of wisdom and a lot of signals throughout this process. And it doesn't mean that things are going to be easy. Like, med school is still going to be hard, whether you're meant to be in med school or whether you're doing it out of obligation. Either way, it's going to still be hard. But it's that feeling of, I'm in this difficult scenario or setting or position in the moment, but it feels like I need to move through this, that I'm not giving up. And maybe that's on someone's soul blueprint. Doing things that are really hard and not giving up halfway. Maybe that person's learning consistency or dedication or diligence or discipline. Maybe that's in that person's blueprint.
Yeah, and every single one is so different.
Absolutely. I'm grateful med school was not in my blueprint. Thanks, Pete. You
Well,
can have that one.
I'm grateful being a hypnotherapist was not in my blueprint because that seems like very hard work to me.
Okay, perfect. So we're both doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to switch gears
Sure.
because I remembered something really actually interesting from my conversations this morning with so at this event it was a bunch of doctors from all the different specialties. So we were all in one room together, which I love. I love when everybody's together because so often I feel we're siloed off in our
It's like
own
the Justice
areas.
League, the X-Men have assembled.
Totally. And first off, I need to give a shout out to pediatricians as a whole. Let me tell
Seriously.
you, if there is one of the doctors had her baby with her on like the other side of the room. And as soon as the baby makes the tiniest noise, all the pediatricians just turn, smile. They like want to hold the baby. I'm like, you guys are the most loving,
Pure,
genuine, pure
pure
souls.
souls.
I felt like I'm an awful person because the sound barely registered.
Quiet over there.
And they're just like, oh, baby, I love them. So I was at a table with pediatricians and more ER people and OBGYN, just all these different specialties. And we started talking, and what we realized was two things, and they both have to do with location, like physical space, which I would love to hear your thoughts on because I always feel like there's like a magic to places, but two things. So we all individually said and realized that we remember certain rooms in like the hospital or clinic, like, oh, that room is where that thing happened. And then every time we walk by, we remember that room. And I have rooms like that. And it's like these rooms that hold these energies of events for you. And we all had spots we go to cry.
Interesting.
Everybody had it. And I was like going around like, so what, you have a spot too? Everybody had a spot. They were all different spots,
All
but
different.
everybody had like a spot like, oh, I always go to this one stairwell outside of that intensive care unit. And then the other day I went and there was somebody else in the stairwell looking at YouTube on their phone. And I had to like go somewhere else and I couldn't go to my crying spot. So what do you think of these spaces and their energies?
Well, you're also thinking of, a place that's so intense. I'm assuming it's most of these people work in a hospital, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, you're in an environment that's very high energy. There's not a lot of privacy, and there's so many people and energy and emotions moving through, a lot of which are life and death. And we use that kind of term a lot for a lot of things that are not life and death. This is actually, the place where it really applies. And so that's going to come with a lot of energy and things moving through. So I think people that work there, they need a place that feels safe, like a little sacred corner where they feel they have energetic privacy to release and not have to hold so much, because I think they're registering, if I don't let this out, then I take this home and these things accumulate, and that becomes a heaviness, a burden, this kind of, cloud that lives around me. And I think medical professionals intuitively feel that, and they know I'm gonna, release this as soon as I can so this doesn't become a problem later.
Which I actually think it's the minority who kind of release things quickly. I think most people, this happened to be a subset of people who were actually at an event called Learning How to Care
Sure,
for Each Other.
sure.
But most people, they're all about, like, I'm going to shove that shit down
Okay.
and I'm going to just push it down and move on to the next patient and just keep going. And so we're trying to break that. But yeah, I think it is valuable to, if you need to let something out, like just let it out. Otherwise, it's
Yeah,
gonna stick with you, right?
yeah. And those rooms where there's super high emotions, they do leave an emotional imprint in those places. You could say the same about if you walk into a home where there's a marriage where there's a lot of fighting or conflict, you can feel it almost in the air. And so a hospital is going to have the same energy because people are fighting and crying and going through it. And there's obviously a lot of people dying in a hospital. So it's also a portal because there's so many souls moving out of this realm from this physical location. And if there's a wing where babies are being born, there's also new souls coming in. So this is really like the call center. It's like a spiritual call center. You know, those like a switchboards. I
Yeah.
don't know why my mind went to that. Not like I was alive during. Let me transfer your call when they had to do it manually by
Uh-huh.
hand. That's kind of the image that I
Oh
get.
yeah, we have a huge labor and delivery area. So yeah, everybody, people are coming, people are going, people are sticking around.
Yes, lots of souls coming in, lots of souls leaving, and the process of leaving is not seamless. It's not a 1-2 step, it's not a perfect system once we leave a body. There's lots of things that happen after that. So yeah, lots of these souls can linger around hospitals and can also can contribute to that heaviness because they're not really supposed to be there, but a lot of them get lost and confused in the process or and kind of can get stuck there.
So what do we do?
Definitely, I mean, if you're working there, definitely having some form of energetic hygiene is going to be important. Doing your best to be in these spaces with a regulated nervous system, that's important. And releasing and doing some sort of processing when you leave. Um, because that heaviness can absolutely follow you home. If you think about it, if a person dies while they're in surgery or under a lot of drugs or anesthesia, how would they know that they died?
I don't know.
I mean, if you're already out because you're under anesthesia and in the process, let's say you pass away, it's not like someone comes with a sign and says, "Hey, you died back there. Here's a letter," you know? So they can linger and stick around, not because they want to, but simply because that that mental state they're in also contributes to your energy body. So your energy body is also can kind of be hazy and clouded from some of the chemicals and the procedures. So when that soul passes, they can stick around from that kind of confusion.
I mean, we have a lot of people that die from overdoses and
Yeah,
I mean, especially right now with our fentanyl crisis. So I could see that they might not know what happened.
yeah. And I was just starting to learn from this doctor in the UK. He was a psychiatrist and he was training medical professionals on a particular protocol for releasing the spirits, and he was trying to get a full-time staff member, spirit releasement therapist in the
No way.
hospitals in
What?
in the UK. And his name just escaped me at this moment, but I'll send it to you if anyone wants to look him up. It was very fascinating. Yeah, he created a protocol to release souls and spirits from particular places, and he was working a lot with nurses and doctors and people that worked in end of life care. And unfortunately, he died a few years ago, so he never got to complete his mission. But I'm sure he's doing something up there.
That's so interesting. And these are the things we don't usually talk
They don't
about
tell
in
you that
medicine. They don't tell you
on.
that. But I for us in our emergency department at least, for most cases we'll do a debrief. And so we'll actually all stay in the room and talk. And so we'll do a moment of silence and we'll talk about
That's
the case and what went right, what went wrong, but it's like I think speaking out loud and so they can maybe hear like, oh, I'm dead now.
yeah,
Like and then I like to always just in my mind, I kind of put my hand on them. And I know one of my colleagues does the same, where we just kind of, you know, let them know what happened and say,
That's great.
just thanks for
Is that
letting us care for
internally or
you.
externally?
Mine is internal. My colleague, I was talking to him this morning. I think sometimes he just kind of says something nice to them, like out loud, sometimes in
That's
his
great.
mind. But I think I don't know. I don't know if it does anything, but every little bit probably
Every
matters.
bit counts. I mean, it can't, even if it does
It's
nothing,
not
at
going to
least
hurt.
exactly. It's not gonna hurt. I think that's perfect. I mean, and also you can't do it all. You can't be trying to save this person's life and be the one that's trying to cross them over and make sure they get into the light. We all play our role and our part. I think that's another important thing to remember that, we each kind of have a framework that we work within that we're most suitable for and helpful in. And I think that when we live from that place and we do our best in that framework, we really do a lot. But if we think we have to do everything, we can spread ourselves thin. And that's when things can start to become taxing and draining. When we start to put extra burdens and responsibilities on us that maybe we don't need.
Hmm. Yeah.
You're worrying about a lot of other things. Trying to make sure that person goes to the light. That's a
Well, usually
that's
what's
a lot.
happening is they're already calling you to the room next door,
Yes, exactly.
and we try to take as much time as we can to process, and sometimes it's harder than others.
Yeah, definitely.
I just read a really interesting book called Life and Death in the ICU,
Okay.
and it's written by an ICU doctor, and it's all about her patients' near death experiences or out of body experiences. And she's like, an ICU doctor that's been doing it for many years and just started compiling these stories. And it's so fascinating because those are patients that typically have breathing tubes in, they're hooked up to ventilators, and they're on medication drips that are just sedating them. They're basically like kept sleepy so that they're comfortable on the breathing machine. And many of them would later tell her that they were watching from above, but had very like details about, oh, is that nurse's name and that they were doing this, and kind of like they just remember all
Mm-hmm.
these things, but they're all like outside watching in, or they remember their cardiac arrests and tell them about what happened and who said what during the code, which nobody would remember, but
Yeah.
it's just many many stories, and you can just tell like, yeah, there is this flux happening when you are that sick and you're on deep sedation, and
Yeah.
it's just fascinating.
Yeah, we have so many of these stories of these moments in the hospital and from near-death experiencers that go almost all the way through back into the light. They kind of get there and realize, oh shoot, it's not my time, and then come back into that hospital room and can, yeah, retrieve a lot of that information. And many of them come back forever changed. Those experiences are so profound, and a lot of those people, it's life altering. They live completely differently after that. It's not something you can just forget. So I think this is also sometimes part of a blueprint. I hate to say it. Or sometimes the person went so far off their blueprint that they needed something to shake them up to get them back on in a very radical way because maybe they weren't listening to the path that was more what they laid out for themselves. And their guides might think, oh, you're going to thank me later because I know what you wanted to come in here and do, and you're not doing it. So we got to get your attention somehow.
We gotta jolt you into it. Literally, we're gonna
Literally.
shock you into it.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Well, in that book, which maybe I'll give you a copy if you want, but in
Yeah.
that book, now she had this her own blueprint of like, this is how she talks to patients. And so every single patient, when they wake up after being in their coma or induced sedation or get through their critical illness, she would ask them, did anything unusual happen? And then almost everyone is like, no, I don't remember anything, but sometimes there are. And so now, I don't just work in the ER, but I take care of all the poison patients in our hospital on the toxicology service. Those patients will be on, breathing tube and ventilator, and they'll be really sick in the ICU. My colleagues joke that I hold on to patients for too long, like I don't sign off on them fast enough. But really, it's a lot of times I'm waiting for them to get off the ventilator so that I can talk to them. And so I always go and I'll be like, okay, what do you remember? Did anything unusual happen? And I feel like 1 out of 10
Okay.
will say something. Like they'll say, I've had them say like, I went to the light and then my mom was there and she told me it wasn't my time and I had to go back. Like I've had stuff like that, or they just
Oh,
remember like little tidbits. And at the very least, I'll be like, okay, well, I'm glad you're doing better. And I just listen. And then
yeah,
I don't say like, that's ridiculous. Don't make things up. It's like, whatever you think happened, I'm here to listen. And at least you voiced it to someone because you thought it
yeah,
was important enough to say.
yeah. And they might not voice that to maybe someone else for the rest of their life. So you might be the only one that some of these people tell that to.
Yeah. And let me tell you, we get a lot of really bad overdoses. So
Yeah.
that part is not fun. And a lot actually in adolescence now.
Oh, yeah, that's the big theme
When I was
in
in
your world.
training back in the day, it would be rare for us to see any intentional overdoses of like pills or anything under age 14. And now I see so many, like, even, of course, tons of 14, 15, 16-year olds, but then also like 12, 13-year
Wow.
olds. I've had some 11-year olds, which you would
Wow.
never, like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even, we would never even talk about 11, 12-year olds intentionally doing anything like that. And so I do feel like that landscape has changed and it's really scary.
What do you think are the main factors contributing to that?
I think a lot of it, because I see them for days. So I know whose families show up, who's there, a lot of them
Yeah.
have supportive family members there. I
Interesting.
used to think a lot of it was like, oh, they don't have family around. What I feel that I'm seeing, and again, this is just a vast generalization, and everybody's case is so individual and unique, but almost a lot of poor coping mechanisms, like something happening and then them not having the outlet of being like, okay, let me go talk about this instead of taking these pills, or kind of just a lot of like high school breakups, and then they do that, and it's just, I don't know. I just feel like that's some of what it is. Of course, some of it is, maybe they have other things, like a lot of other things going on. These are so multifactorial, but
Yeah.
a lot of, I would say, poor coping mechanisms.
I mean, it's got to take a lot for an 11, 12-year-old to take their life. And also, how are they learning how to do that? And what are these kids taking to try and do that? Where are they getting it from?
A lot of it is medications found in the home. So they could be over the counter medications like Tylenol,
Okay.
ibuprofen, cold, cough, cold medicines. So a lot of it is like things found in the home. Some of it might be prescription, so a family member's prescription medications. And then if they have already been diagnosed with a psychiatric problem and have been prescribed medicines, it will be their own medicines, like their own antidepressants. But most of it is common things, and that you can buy over the counter, but can be deadly, like Tylenol, for example.
Scary and very
Yeah.
sad. And I hope that this trend doesn't continue to get younger or more popular. I know you had those episodes about fentanyl, and I know that a lot of those are not organized, non-intentional overdoses, right? So there's
Yeah.
just a lot of, it seems like just a lot of death in general with the rise of that, plus this rise in suicide.
Oh yeah, I mean, and with fentanyl, the youngest we've seen with that is probably like also maybe 15. And Fentanyl overdose is now the leading cause of accidental death in the United States. So, more
Wow.
than car crashes and gunshot wounds combined, far more.
Wow. So what do you do for yourself when you have one of these patients pass away that's so young? How do you handle and navigate the emotional component of your work?
Depends on, I guess, how young and what the case was. Typically, I talk about it. I have a few of my best friends that I also happen to work with and have worked with all these years. We're kind of our own trio, and so we always talk about hard cases together. So that's step one. Like we'll call each other and we'll
That's
talk.
great.
And then I'll also talk about it at work. So I always make sure to talk to, the nurses and the pharmacist and like everyone involved like in the case. And even just that talking and processing
Yeah.
together is really helpful. And then the ones that really stick around, I have to write it out.
Okay.
So I have a lot of little notebooks, a lot of
And do you
notebooks.
write out the details of the case and what
Yeah.
happened, or is it more of an emotional writing?
I'll write out the entire case and what
Okay.
happened, and then I'll do some of the emotional processing after. But typically, by the time I'm done writing the case, I feel better. And sometimes
Mm,
that's it, that's done. So that's like step three, it's like layers of
interesting.
triage almost. And
Sure.
then the really rough ones, as you know, I need therapy and hypnotherapy to get through. I remember I had a
Yeah.
particularly rough case of a 2-year-old that died that I needed to process with you, and that was very very helpful. And so yeah, it's almost like triage and multi-layered. So sometimes just talking to everybody at work like right when it happens, that's enough. And then you
Yeah.
see like what's sticking around, what's still
Mm-hmm.
sticking around, and then
Yeah.
you have to keep processing, so it's like you know what layer to go to.
That's great. Sounds like you've got a good system at this point, which is amazing. And I guess I mean I would assume someone would, but that's probably not true. You're probably an anomaly. I'm sure there's lots of doctors that don't have this system that aren't doing this processing.
Well, it took me years to like get that system
Yeah,
down.
that's true. Trial and error.
A lot of trial and error, a lot of,
And
lots of
looking
it.
back and going, "Oh shoot, this is this has been lingering for a long time. Okay, I'm gonna dive into this now."
Or sometimes one person asking, how are you, how's it been going at work, and then something actually pops into your head.
Sure. You're like,
You're like,
"Good."
like fine,
And
I
it's
didn't
like the
even know
worst
that was
time.
still
Yeah.
in there. Oh shit.
Right. And it's always the worst time to process it too. It's like a random person where it's not
Yeah.
the moment to be diving into it, and you just file save it for later.
Yeah, I was like, I thought I buried that one. I thought we were done with that.
And your mind said, "Yeah, you did. You did bury it, and I'm unburying it now." The parts are bringing it up.
They know. They know what's
They
up.
know. They always know.
Leo, I feel like we covered a lot of random topics today.
Yes.
Tell people where they can find you and how they can work with you.
Yeah. Right now, I'm taking one-on-one clients for deep dive hypnotherapy. If that intrigues you, you can find my website at restorative-hypnosis.com. I'm most active on Instagram, restorative hypnosis. And really, honestly, I'm an open book. You can DM me and ask me questions. There's no silly questions or things that are too out there for me. So anything that's on your mind, let me know. And if I feel like I'm not the best person to support or help you, I've got a huge directory of incredible practitioners that I know, and I love connecting people for the right fit.
Do you still offer the short video chat sessions to get to know each other before you dive into work
Yes,
together?
absolutely. So I always have a 30-minute intro call with someone. Even if you're 100% sure that you want to do this, I always like to chat with people first. So I always have an option to have a free 30-minute call where I get to learn more about you and hear what's going on. And there's no pressure to sign up for anything ever.
And that's what I love about you, Leo. You're just
I can't with
so
the
available.
I I just I can't with the people that pigeonhole you into, "Okay, and you wanna sign up for this thing now?" It's like, "Yeah, let me think about it. This is a big decision."
When it's such like a deep thing that you want to make sure
Yeah.
you're the right fit for each other.
Yeah, and I just live by I don't need to convince anyone to do these things with me. If someone wants to, it's not gonna be me asking them in that moment to get them to sign up that's gonna do it, you know? And I don't want that energy in the session anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Leo.
Thanks for having me. Love chatting and seeing you always.
Same. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Please like, subscribe, share, and download the podcast. And again, you can find us at Human School Podcast on Instagram. I'd like to thank Dr. Zach Effron for the theme music. And I'd just like to make a general disclaimer that any of the institutions I work for, including Community Regional Medical Center, UCSF Fresno, and American Ambulance, have nothing to do with any of my thoughts or opinions, and so we'll kindly leave them out of this. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.